You are not exhausted because life is demanding. You are exhausted because life is overstimulating. This is the confusion of the modern mind. Never in history has so much energy been spent to avoid effort. Never has so much stimulation been used to escape stillness. And never has the human nervous system been so constantly engaged without purpose. The result is not happiness. It is restlessness, not motivation, but fatigue without cause. This is where dopamine enters the story. Dopamine is not pleasure. That is the first misunderstanding. Dopamine is anticipation. It is the chemical signal that says, something is coming, pay attention. In its natural state, dopamine was earned. Hunt the animal, build the shelter, learn the skill, endure the hardship. Then dopamine arrived as confirmation. This effort mattered, but modern life has severed that sequence. Now, dopamine arrives before effort, before progress, before meaning. A swipe, a notification, a video, a sound, no resistance required. And the nervous system adapts, not morally, biologically. A system designed to reward effort has been trained to reward avoidance. This is not a failure of discipline. It is a failure of environment. The modern man lives inside a machine that feeds his brain constant signals of relevance, novelty, and urgency, without asking him to move, build, or endure anything at all. And the mind, overwhelmed by signal, loses its capacity for command. This is why you feel the pull to check your phone without intention. Why silence feels uncomfortable. Why focus feels heavy. Why starting feels harder than continuing. The mind has learned a new rule. Effort is optional. Stimulation is guaranteed. This rule rewires behavior at the deepest level. The Stoics warned against this condition long before neuroscience could name it. They called it softness, not weakness, not laziness, softness, a state in which the mind no longer tolerates friction, delay, or restraint. When every desire is met instantly, patience decays. When every discomfort is escaped, resilience dissolves. When every moment is filled, presence disappears. And with presence goes power. The modern man is not unmotivated. He is overfed. Overfed on content. Overfed on comfort. Overfed on novelty. And like any system fed without discipline, it becomes unstable. This is why dopamine is not a harmless pleasure chemical. In excess, it is corrosive. Not because it feels good, but because it trains the mind away from effort. A mind that expects reward without effort begins to resent effort itself. This is the turning point. Effort starts to feel like punishment. Discomfort feels unfair. Delay feels intolerable. And discipline, once a natural expression of order, begins to feel like violence against the self. This is where modern men collapse. They believe discipline requires force, that they must fight themselves, that something inside them is broken. But nothing is broken. The system is inverted. The Stoics understood this inversion intuitively. They observed that a man surrounded by pleasure becomes fragile, that a man insulated from hardship becomes reactive, that a man who cannot endure boredom cannot endure responsibility. They did not moralize this. They trained against it. They understood that the nervous system must be conditioned, just like the body. Exposure builds tolerance. Avoidance builds sensitivity. This is why the Stoics chose discomfort voluntarily. Cold water, simple meals, long walks, silence, not to suffer, but to recalibrate. They knew that pleasure dulls perception, while restraint sharpens it. A mind accustomed to stimulation loses sensitivity. A mind accustomed to restraint regains clarity. This is why modern men feel numb, not depressed, not broken, numb, The reward system is saturated. When dopamine is constant, nothing feels rewarding. When everything is stimulating, nothing feels meaningful. And so, the mind searches for more, without knowing why. More videos, more noise, more input. But each addition weakens the signal further. This is the paradox of dopamine. The more you chase it, the less it gives. The more you rely on it, the more dependent you become. Until eventually, the mind cannot move without it. This is why discipline collapses first in the small moments. Not during great challenges, but during the quiet hours. You know what you should do. You even want to do it. But the pull of ease overrides intention. Not because you lack character, but because your reward system has been hijacked. The Stoics would say, a man who cannot command his attention cannot command his life. Attention is the gate. Whatever controls it, controls you. And dopamine, when unregulated, becomes the invisible ruler. This is why modern productivity advice fails. It adds tools to a mind that is already overloaded. It adds stimulation to a nervous system already saturated. More apps, more systems, more hacks. But none of it addresses the core problem. The problem is not that effort is too hard. The problem is that effort no longer pays. The mind has learned that avoidance delivers faster reward, and the nervous system obeys what is reinforced. The Stoics did not attempt to outthink this. They arranged life so the wrong behaviors were starved and the right ones rewarded. They removed excess. They reduced options. They narrowed focus. Because discipline does not emerge from willpower. It emerges from environment. A man living inside constant stimulation will fail, regardless of his intentions. A man living inside structure will stabilize, regardless of his mood. This is the first doctrine. You cannot heal a dopamine-saturated mind by demanding more effort from it. You must first remove the poison. Not all at once, not dramatically, but deliberately. In the next part, we will expose how modern dopamine culture reshapes time, destroys patience, and turns men into reactors rather than actors, and why the Stoics believed boredom, silence, and delay were not problems to solve, but weapons to reclaim control. Time itself has been altered, not objectively, but psychologically. The modern man does not experience time as flow. He experiences it as fragments, moments broken into notifications, attention split into tabs, presence diluted by anticipation of the next hit. Dopamine does this. It pulls the mind forward, away from what is, toward what might be next. And so patience feels unnatural. Patience requires remaining with the present without reward. Dopamine teaches the opposite. Leave the present. Something better is coming. The modern nervous system lives in a state of permanent readiness, without direction, always alert, never settled. This is not stimulation. It is low-grade stress. The body does not distinguish between a threat and a reward signal. Both activate attention. Both elevate arousal. When dopamine is constant, the body never fully returns to baseline. Rest becomes shallow. Sleep becomes thin. Calm becomes unfamiliar. This is why silence feels loud. This is why stillness feels uncomfortable. The mind, trained to expect input, interprets absence as loss. Loss of relevance, loss of control, loss of meaning. And so it reaches. Again, this is the cycle. Dopamine does not only affect what you want, it affects how long you can wait. The Stoics understood waiting as a discipline. Delay was not inconvenience, it was training. To wait without agitation was proof of mastery. A man who cannot wait cannot endure. A man who cannot endure cannot lead himself. This is why boredom mattered. Boredom is not empty time. It is unstructured time. Unstructured time reveals the condition of the mind. A disciplined mind uses it. An undisciplined mind escapes it. The modern man escapes immediately. He reaches for stimulation, not because he wants pleasure, but because he cannot tolerate the absence of it. This is dependence, and dependence is the opposite of freedom. The Stoics feared dependence more than hardship. Hardship strengthens. Dependence weakens. This is why they practiced delay intentionally. They did not eat at the first sign of hunger. They did not speak at the first impulse. They did not react at the first emotion. They inserted space, and in that space, they reclaimed command. Modern dopamine culture removes space. Everything is immediate. Everything is optimized. Everything is frictionless. Frictionless systems do not produce strength. They produce fragility. A man accustomed to instant reward experiences delay as threat. A man accustomed to stimulation experiences quiet as emptiness. A man accustomed to novelty experiences repetition as punishment. This is why discipline feels unbearable to the modern mind. Not because it is harsh, but because it is unfamiliar. The nervous system has been trained on a different rhythm. Fast, fragmented, endless. The Stoics lived on the opposite rhythm. Slow, repetitive, finite. They understood something essential. Repetition without novelty builds depth. Novelty without repetition builds restlessness. This is why mastery requires monotony. The modern mind rejects monotony instinctively. It has been taught that boredom is a flaw. But boredom is not the enemy. Boredom is the signal that the mind is no longer being externally driven. It is the doorway back to agency. If you can sit in boredom without reaching, something shifts. The nervous system downregulates, attention consolidates, thoughts slow, and beneath the agitation, clarity begins to surface. This is why the Stoics valued silence. Silence removes artificial urgency. In silence, there is nothing to react to, only what is. This terrifies the dopamine-trained mind, because silence removes escape. And without escape, the mind must confront itself, its impulses, its anxieties, its unfinished thoughts. This is why many men avoid silence, not consciously, but habitually. They keep noise running in the background, music, videos, voices, anything to prevent the mind from settling. But a mind that never settles cannot focus, and a mind that cannot focus cannot act decisively. This is the hidden cost of dopamine overstimulation. Not addiction in the dramatic sense, but erosion of command. The Stoics trained command by reducing stimulation. They did not seek to feel good. They sought to remain steady. Steadiness requires a nervous system that can tolerate low input. This is why voluntary boredom was a discipline. To sit, to walk, to wait, without stimulation, not forever, but regularly. Enough to remind the mind that it does not need constant reward to function. This is recalibration, and recalibration is uncomfortable. At first, the nervous system resists the loss of stimulation. Restlessness increases, irritation rises, the urge to escape intensifies. This is withdrawal, not from pleasure, but from dependency. The Stoics expected this. They did not interpret discomfort as danger. They interpreted it as adaptation, a system adjusting back to baseline. This is where most modern men stop. They interpret discomfort as failure. They return to stimulation to relieve it, and the cycle continues. But if you remain, if you do not reach, if you endure the boredom, something changes. The mind stops searching, the body relaxes, attention stabilizes. And for the first time in a long while, effort feels possible again. Not exciting, possible. This is the threshold. Beyond it, discipline begins to feel natural, not forced, because dopamine is no longer controlling the timing of your actions. You are. In the next part, we will confront the most dangerous illusion dopamine creates, the belief that pleasure equals happiness, and why the Stoics rejected happiness entirely in favor of stability, and how this shift restores focus, endurance, and self-command in a world designed to fracture them. The greatest illusion dopamine creates is not addiction, it is confusion. Confusion between pleasure and happiness. The modern mind assumes they are the same. The Stoics knew they were opposites. Pleasure is stimulation. Happiness, what the Stoics called eudaimonia, was stability. A condition where the mind is not pulled violently toward or away from anything. Dopamine does not create that condition. It disrupts it. Pleasure spikes the nervous system. Stability settles it. This is why a day filled with stimulation leaves you strangely empty, and a day filled with quiet effort leaves you calm. The Stoics observed this without chemicals, without scans, without data. They observed themselves. They saw that pleasure demanded repetition. That indulgence escalated. That desire multiplied when indulged, and weakened when restrained. They concluded something radical for their time. The pursuit of pleasure destabilizes the soul. Not because pleasure is evil, but because dependence on it is. A man who needs pleasure to function is no longer free. Dopamine teaches the mind to chase states, better mood, more excitement, less discomfort. But discipline does not come from managing states. It comes from maintaining form. This is why the Stoics rejected the pursuit of happiness. Happiness fluctuates, form endures. The modern man lives chasing feeling. He asks, do I feel like it? Am I motivated? Am I in the mood? The Stoics asked a different question. What is required? This question bypasses dopamine entirely. It does not ask for reward. It does not ask for pleasure. It asks for alignment. And alignment calms the nervous system. A man who acts according to what is required does not argue with himself. And inner arguments are where dopamine thrives. Every internal debate. Should I start now? Should I wait? Should I check first? Should I rest? Creates friction. Dopamine offers relief from that friction. One hit, and the debate disappears. Not resolved, escaped. This is why dopamine feels like relief. But relief is not resolution. The Stoics were not interested in relief. They were interested in resolution. They resolved inner conflict by removing unnecessary choice. Structure removes debate. When the path is clear, the mind stops bargaining. This is why routine is so powerful. Routine collapses the decision-making loop. No anticipation, no novelty, no dopamine spike, just action. The modern mind resists routine because routine is quiet. It does not excite, it does not stimulate, it does not promise anything, and this is exactly why it works. A nervous system saturated with dopamine interprets quiet as absence, but quiet is not absence. Quiet is space, and space is where control returns. This is why dopamine makes discipline feel boring, because discipline does not stimulate, it stabilizes. And stabilization feels empty to a system trained on spikes. This is the withdrawal period, not from pleasure, but from chaos. The Stoics knew that this phase must be endured. They did not interpret boredom as a sign to stop. They interpreted it as a sign they were doing something right. When stimulation drops, boredom rises. When boredom rises, the nervous system recalibrates. When recalibration completes, clarity appears. This is why the Stoics embraced repetition. Same wake time, same practices, same reflections. Repetition trains the nervous system to find safety in predictability. Dopamine trains it to seek novelty. Novelty feels exciting. Predictability feels safe. A disciplined mind requires safety, not excitement, because excitement destabilizes attention, and attention is the currency of discipline. A man cannot act consistently if his attention is constantly hijacked. This is why dopamine culture destroys follow-through. It makes beginnings attractive and endings dull. Start feels exciting. Continuation feels flat. This is why so many things are started and so few completed. Completion requires endurance. Endurance requires a nervous system that can tolerate low stimulation. The Stoics trained endurance by stripping life down. Fewer possessions, fewer obligations, fewer distractions, not to suffer, but to focus. Focus requires reduction. This is why modern men feel overwhelmed, not because they do too much, but because they attend to too much. Dopamine multiplies objects of attention. Every app, every message, every alert, each one demanding relevance. The Stoics collapsed attention inward. They limited what mattered. What is within my control? What is required of me now? Nothing else was permitted entry. This was not ignorance. It was discipline. A disciplined mind is selective, and selectivity is impossible when dopamine floods the system. Flooded systems cannot discriminate. They react to everything. This is why dopamine overstimulation creates anxiety. An anxious mind is a mind responding to too many signals. The Stoics reduced signals. They did not need stimulation to feel alive. They needed clarity. Clarity produces calm. Calm produces strength. This is the sequence modern life has inverted. Excitement first, calm later. But calm never arrives. The Stoics reversed it. Calm first, strength follows. Pleasure becomes optional. This is the key. When dopamine is no longer required for action, discipline returns naturally. Not through force, through absence of interference. This is why the solution is not to add motivation. Motivation is another spike. The solution is to remove noise, to starve the system of artificial urgency, to allow the nervous system to relearn stillness. This is not quick. It is not dramatic. It is quiet, and it works. In the next part, we will move from understanding to method, how the Stoics structured their days to protect attention, how they placed pleasure after effort rather than before it, and how this simple reversal restores energy, patience, and control in a world engineered to take them. The Stoics did not fight pleasure directly. They repositioned it. This distinction matters. They understood something modern disciplined culture often misses. What you fight gains importance. What you relocate loses power. Pleasure placed before effort becomes a bribe. Pleasure placed after effort becomes a signal. Modern life reverses the order. Stimulate first. Act later. Scroll before work. Entertainment before effort. Reward before responsibility. The nervous system learns the sequence. Why act when reward is already delivered? The Stoics inverted it. Effort first, reward last, or not at all. Not as punishment, as training. They used effort as the stabilizer of the mind. Morning was sacred, not because mornings are magical, but because the nervous system is most neutral there. No stimulation has occurred yet. No spikes, no drops. This neutrality is leverage. The Stoics filled the morning with what required discipline, reflection, physical exertion, deliberate planning. They did not seek pleasure to get going. They acted while the mind was quiet. This trained the nervous system to associate action with neutrality, not excitement. This is critical. When action depends on excitement, discipline collapses the moment excitement fades. When action depends on neutrality, it persists indefinitely. This is why modern productivity systems fail. They rely on motivation, inspiration, hype, all dopamine-based. The Stoic system relied on obligation. Obligation does not stimulate, it grounds. And grounding is what stabilizes attention. The Stoics also controlled transitions. Modern life is a constant transition. Task to task, screen to screen, conversation to content. Each transition triggers a micro-dopamine release. The mind becomes fragmented. The Stoics minimized transitions. They batched life. One activity fully entered, then fully exited. No overlap, no multitasking. Multitasking is dopamine chaos masquerading as efficiency. It feels active. It is mentally destructive. A mind split across inputs cannot develop depth. Depth requires sustained attention. Sustained attention requires low stimulation. This is why deep work feels uncomfortable at first. The nervous system has been trained to expect novelty. When novelty disappears, discomfort arises. This discomfort is misinterpreted as boredom or resistance. It is neither. It is recalibration. The Stoics did not escape this discomfort. They stayed inside it. They allowed the nervous system to settle. They trusted that stillness would produce clarity. And it always did. They also practiced voluntary discomfort, cold, hunger, silence, not as masochism, as inoculation. Voluntary discomfort trains the nervous system that discomfort is survivable. This is dopamine's opposite lesson. Dopamine teaches avoidance. Avoid discomfort. Avoid silence. Avoid effort without reward. The Stoics taught approach. Approach what is necessary. Approach what strengthens. Approach what clarifies. This created internal confidence, not confidence from success, confidence from capability. A man who knows he can endure discomfort does not panic when pleasure is absent. He does not reach for stimulation reflexively. He remains composed. Composure is the antidote to dopamine chaos. The Stoics structured evenings differently as well. Modern evenings are stimulus dumps. Endless content, rapid consumption, no reflection. This trains the nervous system to end the day aroused, not resolved. The Stoics ended days with accounting. What did I do well? What did I fail to do? What will I correct tomorrow? This was not self-criticism. It was closure. Closure reduces mental residue. Mental residue fuels dopamine seeking because unresolved tension seeks relief. When the mind is resolved, it rests. Rest does not require stimulation. This is why sleep quality collapses in dopamine-heavy lives. The mind never closes its loops. The Stoics closed them daily. This created a rhythm. Effort, reflection, rest, not stimulation, not escape. Rhythm stabilizes the nervous system. Chaos excites it. The modern man lives in excitement and wonders why he is exhausted. Excitement is metabolically expensive. Stillness is restorative. This is the paradox dopamine hides. What feels energizing drains you. What feels boring restores you. The Stoics chose restoration over stimulation. They were not anti-pleasure. They were anti-dependence. Pleasure was permitted, but never required. This distinction is everything. A man who can enjoy pleasure without needing it is free. A man who needs pleasure to function is enslaved. Dopamine does not announce itself as slavery. It announces itself as convenience, as relief, as entertainment, as harmless. But it slowly rewires the decision hierarchy. Effort becomes optional. Discomfort becomes intolerable. Stillness becomes threatening. This is how discipline dies. Not in dramatic collapse, in subtle preference shifts. The Stoics protected against this by anchoring identity to action, not feeling. I am the kind of person who does what is required. This identity bypasses dopamine. It does not negotiate with mood. It does not wait for motivation. It acts. Action creates momentum. Momentum stabilizes the mind. Stability reduces craving. Craving reduction restores autonomy. This is the chain. The modern world breaks it at the first link. It tells you to feel first, then act. The Stoics acted first and let feeling follow. This is not repression. It is sequencing. Correct sequence creates strength. Incorrect sequence creates dependence. This is why dopamine is the modern poison. Not because it exists, but because it is misused. Because it is front-loaded into life. Because it is detached from effort. Because it is constant. The nervous system was never designed for constant reward. It was designed for earned reward. Remove the earning, and the system malfunctions. The Stoics diagnosed this without labs. We confirm it with them. The solution is not abstinence. It is discipline of sequence. Effort before pleasure. Stillness before stimulation. Reflection before consumption. These are not moral rules. They are neurological alignment. In the final part, we will bring this into the modern world. How to apply Stoic sequencing inside technology, work, and daily life without retreating from society. And how to build a disciplined nervous system in an environment engineered to dissolve it. The mistake most men make is believing the solution requires escape. Delete everything. Move to the mountains. Abandon technology. This is fantasy. The Stoics did not flee Rome. They mastered themselves inside it. They trained discipline within stimulus, not outside it. This matters because modern life is not going to slow down for you. So, the question is not, how do I avoid dopamine? The question is, how do I place it correctly? The Stoic answer is architecture. You do not rely on willpower. You design environments that reduce negotiation. Negotiation is where dopamine wins. Every time you ask, should I? Dopamine enters the conversation. The Stoics eliminated this. They decided in advance what time to wake, what work to do, what standards to keep. Decision made once, executed daily. This is why routine is power. Routine removes choice. Choice is expensive. Choice drains attention. Choice invites stimulation. When life has form, the nervous system relaxes. Modern men resist routine because it feels restrictive. But restriction is only painful when imposed emotionally. When imposed structurally, it becomes invisible. You do not suffer because you brush your teeth at the same time every day. Structure only hurts when it conflicts with desire. And desire, in the modern world, is dopamine trained, not truth trained. So the work begins with placement. You place dopamine after effort. Never before. No phone before work. No content before creation. No stimulation before obligation. This single rule, enforced consistently, will change your nervous system. Not immediately, gradually. At first, resistance appears. Irritation, restlessness, anxiety. This is not discipline failing, this is addiction dissolving. The nervous system protests the loss of constant reward. Stay calm. Do not dramatize. The Stoics did not argue with discomfort. They observed it. They allowed it to pass. And it always does. The second correction is containment. Dopamine must be bounded. Endless access destroys value. The Stoics practiced limits instinctively. Meals were simple. Entertainment was sparse. Conversation was deliberate. Not because pleasure was evil, but because excess dulled perception. Modern dopamine is infinite by design. Scroll has no end. Content has no finish. Stimulation has no boundary. So you must impose artificial edges, time-boxed usage, defined windows, clear endpoints. Not a little more, never a little more. That phrase is dopamine's favorite lie. Instead, this ends at 8:30. This lasts 20 minutes. This is done after one episode. Firm edges create safety. Safety calms the nervous system. A calm nervous system does not crave. The third correction is substitution. You do not remove dopamine without replacing its function. Dopamine promises energy. You must provide energy another way. The Stoics used physical movement, walking, training, manual effort. Movement generates stable dopamine, earned, not hijacked. It also produces serotonin and norepinephrine, chemicals of confidence and alertness. This is why disciplined men train even when tired, not for aesthetics, for neurological hygiene. A trained body stabilizes the mind. The modern man tries to think his way out of dopamine addiction. The Stoic trains his way out. The fourth correction is silence. Dopamine cannot survive silence. Silence reveals cravings. Cravings exposed lose power. This is why stillness feels threatening. It removes distraction. It confronts you with yourself. The Stoics sat with themselves daily. No music, no input, no escape, just thought. This clarified priorities, clarified values, clarified what mattered and what didn't. Clarity eliminates compulsive consumption. A man who knows what he stands for does not scroll aimlessly. Aimlessness is a symptom of an unexamined life. The fifth correction is identity anchoring. You do not say, "I'm trying to be disciplined." You say, "I am disciplined." Trying invites relapse. Being creates consistency. You are what you repeatedly do. So discipline is built by small, immovable actions. Same wake time, same first task, same evening shutdown. Non-negotiable, not heroic, predictable. Predictability stabilizes the nervous system. A stable nervous system does not seek dopamine spikes. It does not need novelty. It does not need escape. This is the quiet power modern culture lacks. Everyone chases peaks. The Stoic builds a plateau, and from that plateau, strength emerges. Not loud, not fast, but unshakable. A disciplined life does not feel intense. This is the final misunderstanding. Intensity belongs to chaos. Stability belongs to order. When dopamine is placed correctly, the nervous system stops oscillating. There are no spikes to chase, no crashes to recover from, only rhythm. The Stoics lived by rhythm. They rose at consistent hours. They worked in defined blocks. They ended the day deliberately, not because time itself mattered, but because predictability produces calm. A calm system obeys command. This is the final doctrine. You do not defeat dopamine. You demote it. You remove it from leadership. You return it to function. Reward follows effort. Pleasure follows completion. Stimulation follows stability, never the reverse. This single hierarchy restores sovereignty. When reward is no longer first, the nervous system stops demanding. When stimulation is no longer constant, attention returns. And when attention returns, life slows, not externally, but internally. The world remains loud, but the mind no longer vibrates with it. This is not suppression, it is correction, not restraint, alignment, and alignment changes everything that follows. So the structure becomes simple. Morning is for creation, no consumption, no noise, no input. The mind is clean there, undisturbed, unstimulated. This is where direction is set. Midday is for execution, defined tasks, finite scope, clear finish. No multitasking, no novelty hunting, just completion. Completion stabilizes identity. Evening is for restoration, limited pleasure, contained entertainment, intentional shutdown, not indulgence, not escape, restoration, and night is for stillness, silence, reflection, sleep. This is not minimalism. It is command. Command over time, command over attention, command over reward. The modern man believes freedom comes from infinite choice. The Stoics knew freedom comes from limited obligation. When obligations are clear, the mind stops searching. When the mind stops searching, it stops consuming. When consumption ends, dopamine settles. And when dopamine settles, strength appears. Not excitement, stability. This strength is not emotional. It is not motivational. It is structural. The kind that holds under pressure. The kind that does not negotiate. The kind that does not collapse when tired. This is why Stoicism endures. It does not ask you to feel better. It asks you to live correctly. Feeling follows alignment. Calm follows order. Confidence follows consistency. This is why discipline, once installed, feels merciful. No more arguing with yourself. No more starting over. No more chasing stimulation to escape discomfort. Just movement. Just execution. Just presence. Dopamine was never the enemy. Disorder was. And disorder is not defeated emotionally. It is replaced structurally. You do not reason your way out of chaos. You build your way out. Routine by routine. Boundary by boundary. Action by action. Until the nervous system learns something new. That it does not need constant reward to function. That it can wait. That it can endure. That it can remain still without collapsing. This is where authority returns. Not imposed, earned. This is the path forward. Not dramatic, not loud, not fast, but exact. A life with edges, a mind with boundaries, a nervous system trained to wait. This is iron stillness. Stillness that is not passive, but prepared. Stillness that does not drift, but holds. And once it is built, nothing external can poison it again. Because dopamine no longer leads. It follows. And what follows cannot rule. End.